So it appears that Games Workshop is going to cancel all tournaments, including local ones, and it's canceling the production of the Warhammer 40k MMO. I'm guessing that they just have given up entirely and are closing their doors, because both of those are terrible, terrible decisions. That is your bread and butter. I mean, you cannot claim that you are, just cutting corners to improve business and cut the very foundation of Warhammer 40k. Which is kind of sad, but kind of good in a way. It's sad because, I was looking forward to the Warhammer 40k MMO. I personally would have bought it. However, and this is a big however, only if it was under a company that did not A, have subscription fees, and B, was not on Steam. And the likelihood of meeting both of those criteria is very unlikely given the current video game corrupt mafia market. So, in theory, I would have bought the game, but probably not. I probably would have pirated it just in spite. But as far as their miniature game goes, it's ridiculous. So they're going to cancel all tournaments, which is, the backbone of Warhammer 40k. And on top of all this, they were losing money because they increased the price of their miniatures, which is even more stupid. Why would you do that? The miniatures were already expensive. You're going to increase the prices and release a bunch of shit that nobody wants. I mean, why don't you just have polls as to what people commonly want to see? If you have polls of, say, would you prefer to see the Grey Knights Codex, or, Chaos Marines, or Orcs, or whatever, then you pick the 3 highest bars and you work on that. Or, lower the prices. If you lower the prices, they're more affordable and people buy them in more bulk. And thus, you make more money in the long run. But, see, capitalism is not based off actual rationality, or skill, or talent, or hard work. It's based off greed and binding you in a position where you have no options and you have to do it anyway. See, like how the market is now in video games, where you will either be trapped playing under subscription fees, you will be trapped under Steam's terms of service, where they can delete your account at any time, and will delete your account at any time if they so choose to. Or you'll be under DLC scams and only get half of the fucking game. Your only other alternative out of these 3 hells is to pirate. And pirating is not practical for multiplayer games. So essentially you're just pirating Nintendo games or something, because there is nothing to pirating for the better games, for the more in-depth quality games. That is a social experience. I'm not fucking pirating for Kirby's Dream Land, So that's the problem with the market, and there's no way around that. Just as there's no way around Facebook's monopoly on social networking, and, nobody else can seem to compete with them. It's not because they couldn't, it's because they don't want to. Because Facebook is good for corporations, not for you. They don't give a shit about you. They'll delete your account anytime they want. And they will censor you anytime they want. But yet they want you to participate so that they can get information on you and use you for statistical purposes. So they're getting something out of it, but you're not getting something out of it. How is that rational self-interest? And your only other option is to not have a Facebook. To not socialize on the internet. It's mind-boggling. The only options are you do it their way or there is no way. There is no third choice. There is no other options. And so many people are just fine and dandy with that, because they are unthinking morons. Facebook could fucking put a gun to their head and shoot them, and they would applaud it. They'd have a big-ass smile on their face as Mark Zuckerberg fucking murders them right in front of their families, because they are just brain dead. They have lost all credibility and all pride in themselves. They just accept anything because they are consumer whores. They are incapable of reason or responsibility. So back to Games Workshop. Games Workshop is dead. That's it. There is no way. There's nothing they can have planned that will, fix Games Workshop. Nothing can stop their eventual collapse if they're cutting back on both the video game market and the miniature market. Because if you ask me, they should have cut the miniature market a long time ago. What are we, in 1981? Who the hell is buying expensive-ass plastic figurines? That's a scam in and of itself. I can't tell you how mad it makes me that people buy Magic the Gathering cards that become obsolete in 2 years, either because they cycle out and they never held Type 1 tournaments, or because they just make something even more overpowered, like in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon, and thus it wouldn't matter anyway if they cycled out, because who's going to use them anyway? So it's a fucking scam. It's criminal. How do they get away with this shit? And, Warhammer 40k cycles things out by having new codexes. There's 1st edition, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and I believe this is the 6th. There's been 6 fucking editions throughout their history. I think they've been around since the late 70s. So, yeah, there's a new edition almost every 10 years, which sounds like a long time. But that means every 10 years, you gotta buy new books, new miniatures, and things like that to keep up. That adds up. You're not that rich to be affording this hobby. So it's just a scam. It's a criminal scam, and they get away with it because nobody does anything about it. So, they should have been moving to the video game market, where they would have been welcomed, because Warhammer 40k fans, knowing how Warhammer 40k works, would have reveled in being able to roleplay whatever, Space Marines, Imperial Guard, Tau, as an MMO experience. Maybe even a story-based RPG. Or, they seem to have a lot of success with the real-time strategies, which are basically like playing the miniature game, only better, because they're animated, you have more choices, and things like that. So, why couldn't they do that? I mean, it's not quite as much money, but it's a steady income. It's a steady income, making good games, and you bring joy to people's lives. It's an honest business. But that's not capitalism. Capitalism does not cherish honesty and integrity and a good product. They don't want any of that. They want to make fucking money. And the best way to make money is to cut corners, screw people over, have people work their asses off for fucking peanuts. That's how you make money. And these ideas that we can have the positive of capitalism, and if there was no government, fucking government, man, taxes everybody and regulates the market, and that's why the corporation... No, that is capitalism. You can't have one without the other. Because if you deregulate the market, then they'll just fucking do it more. Because there's nothing to stop them. Nothing besides, a mob coming at them with pitchforks and torches and just burning down the goddamn building. But the free market doesn't work. You can't just vote with your dollar and suddenly the whole economy collapses. Because it doesn't work that way. They didn't get to where they are being that stupid. They're smart enough to manipulate the public's interest and the public's trust to continue buying their product. They're smart enough to secure their profits and conspire with other capital owners to keep the money flowing. They're not gonna fucking stick their necks out and risk, economic catastrophe. They're not gonna stick their neck out with a new product people might not like, and they're certainly not gonna stick their neck out and risk bad publicity. If ever any kind of unethical treatment or, deaths happen because of their unregulated factories and shit, they will cover that shit up. They will silence opposition, just like forums fucking do, and silence every single activity the moderators do. That's why the vast majority of moderators are child molesters, drug addicts, and fucking criminals. That's why they're all crooked. Because they can be crooked, because anytime someone calls them out on their crookedness, it's very easy to just delete all their posts, ban them, and everyone just assumes they're a troll, because who are they going to believe? the capital owner, the one that owns the site, and has had them in this ruse that this is a fantastic forum, it's so fun? Or are they going to believe the guy that actually made the post, but you weren't able to see it in time, so you just have to take his word for it, and he's pissed off, and he's disgruntled, he might throw a few F-bombs? Who are you going to believe? And why is it should be up to you to always make these intelligent, well-thought-out posts only for them to get deleted and for you to get ravaged by a moderator rapist? It isn't practical. It isn't sensible in any sense of the word, but you don't care because you want to see it. You want to see people get raped. That gives you a boner. That is your fucking cocaine. You snort that shit up when people get harassed and attacked. And that's what makes me sick about you. That's why I enjoy natural disasters and enjoy knowing people get shot and shit. Because you are terrible people. Everything about you is terrible. You enjoy this evil. You don't want to see this change. You're not simply ignorant. Ignorance does not excuse this level of bad. You are wicked. You like it this way. That's the only explanation. And, you know, I know this leads into entirely different discussions, but it's true. It's all connected. This is how the evils of capitalism works. And that says something about businesses and private enterprise, where they would rather fail. They would rather just go out of business and put a bunch of people out of work than just do something responsibly, honestly, and modestly. Rather than make a modest income and make a little bit of profit, they'd rather jack up prices and make great profits on short term. That way, when shit hits the fan, you know, they can close the doors, wipe their hands with it, live their lives in their big houses on the money they collected, and everyone else below them, the runs that actually produce these figurines and shit like that, you know, they have to collect unemployment, if that, because, you know, God forbid we have unemployment in this country. That's socialism. So, you know, many people have to suffer. The consumers have to get inferior quality because someone's greedy and wants to make, you know, 500K instead of 100K, you know? That's all it comes down to. It all comes down to pure greed, pure evil, and just no accountability whatsoever. No respect for anyone but yourself. No courtesy, no compassion, no nothing. Just evil, just the abyss. So, that is why Games Workshop is going to fail, and it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. It's amazing. I'm glad to see this bourgeoisie bastard finally be put in the grave, and this is the final nail in the coffin. It's a shame because I do like Warhammer 40K, but that's a small price to pay to see a scam artist just go out of business. They don't need to exist. And unfortunately, even them going out of business is not really going to be a punishment for them. It just abortions that aspect of bourgeoisie. You know, Games Workshop will never again steal people's lunch money over fucking overly expensive figurines. But the rich will still be rich, and a bunch of poor people will be out of a job. That's the repercussions. But at least Games Workshop is no longer leeching off of society. At least Games Workshop is no longer, existing as its empirical facade, as its state of being. Games Workshop gone, but the rich still benefit, of course, because they didn't get that in that position by not knowing what to do. They are always 3 steps ahead. And that much is certain. You have to know that when you're a communist, a socialist, an anarchist, or anybody else. These guys are extremely intelligent, and they lack all inhibitions. They just don't care about human life. And when you realize that, that's how dangerous they are. When they're cunning, and they don't care. That's a very unhealthy combination for you, for you as a normal human being. And, unfortunately, it sucks for society, too. It might be good for them, it might be good for their kids, but it's not good for the human race. but you don't care about that because you'd rather see Jim Profit get banned, and you would rather shut him up because he shit posts rather than think about all these implications. So that's all I have to say for now.